Section 7, we are taking a look at the quadratic formula, and this is something that if you just see that, you might not necessarily remember what that means. The quadratic formula, this is the long x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a that you probably learned in Algebra 1. And just kind of hearing that, where on earth did that come from? That's what we're going to take a look at in this first video. And my caution is that this is kind of scary looking, but do your best with this. Okay, this is one of our opportunities that we have as honors students to really think and really push our brains a little bit more than what we're used to. All right, so to figure out where this comes from, I'm going to start off with our general form, or our standard form for a quadratic equation. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, this quadratic formula really comes about by completing our square. So we're going to complete the square with this long thing here and solve our equation that way. Okay, so my first thing that I need to do when we complete the square, our a value, where we need to have 1x squared. So to start, I'm going to divide both sides by a. And that gives me x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0. And then I'm going to subtract this c over a from both sides, giving me x squared plus b over ax equals negative c over a. Okay, I got my x squared and my b over ax. I'm in prime position to figure out how to complete my square. So in general, when we're completing our square, we take half of this number and square it. And when we're solving equations, we add that to both sides. So half of this number, half of b over a, would be b over 2a squared. And again, I would add that to both sides. And again, there's a lot of fractions going on here. It's kind of intimidating, but it's really pretty neat how this actually works out. After I've completed the square, this is a perfect square trinomial here, and it factors to be x plus whatever this is divided by 2. So b over 2a squared. And this looks hopefully a lot nicer already. Negative c over a plus b over 2a all squared. We square the top and get b squared. 2a all squared would be 4a squared. Okay, let's keep going with this. And I guess before we really go any further with this, I am going to take my two fractions that are on this right side and combine them. I want to do this addition because that'll make my next steps a little bit nicer. I like this denominator of 4a squared so that I have a denominator of 4a squared here. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4a. That gives me, and I'm going to split this up into two parts here. Negative c times 4a is minus 4ac over 4a squared plus b squared over 4a squared. And I haven't done anything to that left side. And then the last thing I'll do before I deal with my left side here is to combine my two fractions because I have a common denominator now. Negative 4ac plus b squared. I could also write as b squared minus 4ac. And if you know your quadratic formula, you're probably thinking, oh, hey, that looks kind of familiar. Over 4a squared. Okay, so back to our equation. Back to my left side. Right now, I have x plus b over 2a all squared equals b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. And keep in mind, our ultimate goal is to get x by itself. So my next step here would be to square root both sides. And that would give me x plus b over 2a on the left. And square rooting this whole thing, to square root a fraction, we square root the top, which gives us the square root of b squared minus 4ac. The square root of 4a squared is 2a. And then our last step to get x by itself is to subtract b over 2a. I should have just kept this. Expanded to give me a little more room. But I'd subtract b over 2a, where we already have a common denominator. All of this minus b over 2a, I could write my negative b first. Negative b. Oh, and again, as soon as we took that square root, I forgot to write this in here, should be plus or minus. Plus or minus. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There's my quadratic formula. So there's a lot of work here, but it's kind of cool to see where this quadratic formula comes from. It's not just this magical formula that somebody told you happened and you don't really know how. It happens from completing the square.